Hello, health science students. I want to look at, in this presentation, the digestive system. So here's an overview of the digestive system. We can see that it starts in the mouth and ends down in the anus, but what happens in between? We have basically a one-way tube and it runs through here. We have some accessory organs, and that just means organs that the food does not go through, but they still play a role in the digestive system. So I want to talk about each of these organs. So this may be a fairly long presentation, and I may need to split it into two. We'll see how fast I go. Okay, so first thing we wanted to make a distinction between is mechanical and chemical digestion. So mechanical digestion is called mechanical because it doesn't involve a chemical change at all. It's just the food is changed shape, I guess. So when you chew your food up, you're not making any chemical changes to the food. You haven't broken any chemical bonds or put anything together. You've just changed the format. It's kind of like when you make ice cubes. You haven't changed the format, you've just changed the state, right? So that's mechanical. So chewing and peristalsis. So peristalsis is the rhythmic contractions that happen all along the digestive system to enable the food to just move through the system. So it's just muscular contractions. And then we have chemical digestion, which it does involve a chemical change. So that is breaking bonds within the food itself. And that is initiated by enzymes. And enzymes are agents that facilitate chemical reactions. So there's enzymes in the saliva in your mouth and the gastric juice in your stomach, and also different organs which put out different enzymes, like the pancreas. It puts out pancreatic juice, and the gallbladder releases bile, and that breaks down fats. And then there's also enzymes in the intestine that and the pancreas that digest food. So that's the breaking down, it's the breaking of chemical bonds, and that's an actual physical change in the format. So let's just go through each stage of the digestive system individually and look at what's going on. So I'll move my head here. I don't know where I'm going to put my head. I'll put my head up here. Okay, I'll put it there for a minute. So all you're looking at here is the esophagus. So if you remember when we were talking about the respiratory system, and I talked about the trachea as kind of protecting this esophagus runs kind of right in behind the trachea, and this is a very muscular tube. And you can see the round layers of muscle in here, and those contract to move the food down from the stomach or from the mouth into the stomach. So it's about 10 inches in length, and it's basically a tube, but it does have some glands that will secrete some enzymes in there to actually start the process of breaking down foods into different chemicals. So this is what peristalsis looks like. When the food has been chewed and swallowed, the mass of food that they're showing here in this green ball, they actually have a special name for that. Once it's been chewed and swallowed, it's called a bolus, a food bolus. So this peristalsis action is just that rhythmic muscular contractions that are so strong they'd go against gravity. This probably isn't a good idea to try, but even if you were hanging upside down, you could still chew food and have those peristalsis work against gravity to bring that food to your stomach. So it's a very powerful muscular contraction that keeps food going the right way down into the stomach. So maybe this would have been a better place to start, but having trouble with my head here so that you can see. But anyways, this is going to give you kind of a side view of what's going on in the mouth and the throat and the pharynx, so you can see what's kind of going on here. So this is the food, this green bolus right here. You can see the tongue underneath that. And this is what I was talking about a few days ago when we were talking about the respiratory system, this epiglottis. It's like a little trap door for the trachea so that when you swallow this bolus, the food isn't going to go down into your trachea. It's going to go into the esophagus instead. So it will go down the right tube, basically. So here we can see the larynx, we can see the trachea here with no food going down it. And then here we can see the food bolus going into pass over the epiglottis, which kind of folds, like I said, like a little trap door, and it just keeps food from getting in there and it goes down the esophagus. Where's the food going? It's going into the stomach. And here you can see that this liver is kind of covering the stomach. So they've drawn this liver kind of transparent so that you can kind of see the stomach in behind that. So food that is now down in the stomach, particularly the protein, is going to start being acted upon in the stomach by this enzyme called pepsin, which breaks down protein. So maybe I should back that up a little bit and just mention that if you had eaten bread, say you'd eaten bread, that's a carbohydrate, then these salivary glands up in your mouth are going to start acting upon that carbohydrate as soon as you start chewing it. So you're getting chemical and mechanical digestion happening right in the mouth, but only on carbohydrates. The meat that you eat is not going to be acted upon until it gets to the stomach. So the stomach is where protein starts getting digested. So you can read this on your own, and I've already said most of this. I'm going to skip by it. What you're looking at here is just like a little cutaway view, and see they've taken a little tiny piece of the stomach just so they could show you, blow it up and show you what the wall of the stomach looks like. And one thing to notice is these gastric pits, and that's where you're going to get the gastric enzyme is going to be released through those gastric pits. And you can also see that there's these mucus secreting cells because the stomach needs to be careful it doesn't digest itself, and that's the mucus plays a role in helping to make sure that the stomach doesn't actually digest itself, because this is a very, very powerful enzyme that is released here. And you can also see like the muscular layers of the stomach there. Um, the next step from the stomach is, of course, going to be into the small intestine. Now you can see what they're calling here, they've labeled here as a pyloric sphincter. So anytime you have a sphincter, that refers to like a round muscle that will open and shut. And it's actually very, very, very strong muscle. So this sphincter will act as kind of like a valve, like a one-way trip. So the food that is digested from here can leave, but it can't get back in, which is a good thing. So the small intestine, and my face is covering lots of things here, but anyways, the small intestine is where the majority of digestion occurs. Most people think, but wrongly, that most of the digestion happens in the stomach, and it does not. Digestion is mostly happening in the small intestine. If you could blow up the and have a look at the interior of the small intestine, you would see that it has a very bumpy surface, and they kind of look like this. These are called villi, and what they do is they increase surface area. And anytime you have an area of increased surface area in biology, that's going to indicate to you that there's lots of chemical reactions happening there. And there's lots of chemical reactions. So fats are digested here in the small intestine, and also the small intestine will finish off digesting proteins and carbohydrates as well. The small intestine is separated into three distinct parts. So whether you need to know this is probably you don't, but anyways, the first part is called the duodenum or the duodenum, and the jejunum and the ileum. And the ileum is what empties into the cecum, which is the large intestine. So I'm still talking about the small intestine, and it's important to understand just how long it is. So if you looked at my meter stick, which is pretty long, and you times that by 6 or 7, that's how long your small intestine is. So it's very, very long. And like I said, it's the most important area for digestion, and that's where fats, proteins, and carbs are all digested. Completed. Anyways, they could get started in the mouth or started in the stomach, but they're all completed in the small intestine. So what we're looking at here is a sideways view. And this is kind of important here. And we are going to talk a little bit more about the liver and the gallbladder and the pancreas as being accessory organs to digestion. Now, what does that mean? It means that food does not pass through the liver, it does not pass through the gallbladder or the pancreas, but those organs play a role in secreting enzymes that break down the food. So I'm just gonna deviate off and start talking about some of those and those organs. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna stop the recording right here for part 1 and create a part 2 right now so I don't get cut off. So join me for part 2 in the next exciting adventure.